Today we'll describe how to use ActiveVOS Designer to create, edit, and deploy user-facing forms for working with tasks and kicking off a new process instance. We're looking at ActiveVOS Designer version 7.1, and I have an estimation process currently open in the editor. The process begins with a request message for work to be done on a car. The chief estimator reviews the request and either completes it himself or delegates the estimation work to any number of specialists that are on staff. If this path is chosen, each of the people whom he's delegated work to will be assigned a new task to complete. The process waits for all of the responses and creates a final task for the chief that contains each of the individual responses. The chief provides the final estimate, and the estimation process is essentially complete. As you can see, there's quite a bit of human interaction in this process, and each of these people activities will need to have some sort of presentation applied to help the user complete the task. Let's take a quick look at what this process looks like when it's completed and deployed. I'll open up a browser page that has a form that's already filled out and ready to go. I submit the request and get back a response that the request is being worked on. Now I'll go to ActiveVOS Central and log in as the chief mechanic. The chief is going to select the task and then open it in a separate tab. And we'll also claim it. Here, we can see the details of the original request. Here's the result of the call to the rules engine. And here's where the chief can enter his response and complete the task. We have a nice little date picker widget to help us out. And when I refresh the task list, we can see that there's no other tasks that are currently pending. Now, let's go back to Designer and take a look at the initial review activity and how we would create that form that the chief just used. As we just saw, I already deployed the process using a task form that I've customized slightly to add tab controls and group boxes around the data. But let's create a new one from scratch to see what I used as a starting point. At this point in development, I already have the task defined, meaning the underlying WSDL service definition is already created. So, based on the input and output message definitions, I'll let ActiveVOS automatically generate a default user form by selecting Create Form. I'll give it a name, and the form will be saved in my project and opened in the editor. Task forms use HTML to present the data to the user and include a few JavaScript functions to take care of some basic user interactions like claiming or completing a task, saving task data, and the like. The forms leverage jQuery and JSON, which lets you be very creative in how you organize the data that's displayed to the user, and also lets you provide widgets like the date selector to help them in completing their tasks. The generated form can be deployed without changes, but you'll most likely use it as a starting point to do some sort of customization. The form editor is broken into two sections. The top is a WYSIWYG preview of sorts, and the bottom is a source view. Here's the task detail that we're presenting to the user. It's basically the task's input message. Here's the response from the rules engine. And here's the task output message where the chief would enter data to complete the task. When I select an item in the top panel, the source view is automatically synchronized. And any change that I make in either part of the editor will immediately be reflected in the other view. There's also a palette available where you can drag and drop HTML objects directly to the canvas. The generated form is organized so that HTML presentation's at the top and JavaScript's at the bottom of the page. Using the form editor, I can tweak the default form to add or hide certain fields, reorganize the presentation, provide default values to the output form, add validation or widgets to help the user, and a bunch of other things. There's also a preview tab, which will give me a more realistic representation of how the form will look when opened in a browser, and it also allows me to preview some of the interactions. I can test radio buttons, drop downs, and the like, and because this field is defined as a date in my WSDL, I automatically get a date picker widget. Again, if I'm not happy with the default presentation, I can just go back to the editor view and change it. These task forms are automatically deployed with the process, so there's really nothing more to think about once you have the format set. The other type of form that can be created in the designer is a process request form. It's similar to task forms in almost every way, but this form would be used to kick off a process instead of working with a task. I'll show you how to create a process request form based on another one of our sample projects, the loan approval process. So to create a process request form, I'll just select a folder in my project where I want to create the form, right mouse, and select New Process Request Form. And now I'll just point to the service and operation that I want to invoke when the form is submitted. Then I'll give it a name and a location to save the file. The default HTML form is created and, again, opened in the editor. From here, customizing the form is exactly as we saw with task forms. Next, we need to make AV Central aware of the new process request form. So what I'll do is create a configuration file that's basically used by AV Central to display custom categories and process request forms. Again, the file opens in the editor, and in this case, the contents are commented out to provide an example of the type of entries that'll be needed. I'll replace the sample entry with values that represent the form we just created. So I'm going to add a new category called Finance. The request form will show up as Request a Loan. I granted access to the new form to the Chief group. I've given a description. And I've pointed to the project location of the form. Now I'll just save the configuration file and then deploy both the configuration file and the request form to the ActiveVOS server. But before I do, let's check AV Central to see what request forms currently exist. We can see here that there's a category called Employee Programs. After deploying our new config and request form, we should see a new category called Finance. The deployment was successful, so let's go back to AV Central, refresh the session, and here's my new request form. I can tell the request was successfully submitted because we can see the status is under review. So the AV config file is used to create custom categories for process requests and also for custom reports. Task forms used for human-facing activities within a process are automatically deployed with the process. For more information on working with forms, refer to our documentation, sample projects, or download the Classic Cars demo project from our website. Thank you.